The third of the season, the last 27 games start Thursday night. We'll look at the schedule. We'll look at the standings. What can we expect from the Boston Celtics? It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Yup. Being down, be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Back to back, if I say it, it's stamped. Locked on number 19, the best one, the next one. Juice loose in your pool now for the next run. It's the C's, who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT, Karalis, recap the madness. Every game, every practice. Best daily pod, no cap like Brad Beckett. Clutch like Drew to KP, tap in daily. Prime time, dapping D White on the sideline. Raining Jace, how it started, raising business, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, Monday through Friday, plus bonus podcasts when they play on the weekends, and they'll do that plenty coming up the rest of this way. They do it 3 times in March, 4 times, 5. There's 5 games on a Friday or Saturday, so lots of bonus podcasting. So if you're subscribed, you'll get those podcasts directly to your favorite podcasting app. You'll also see it on YouTube. Get into the comment section there. Have some fun. Let me know what you're thinking. I am John Karalis, covering the Celtics for about 20 years now, doing it right now for Boston Sports Journal. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So place that first $5 bet. You have the potential to get $150 in bonus bets if it wins. So make it a good one. We're looking ahead to this the third. Very tempting. We can call it the second half of the season. Can't we do that, Tom Westerholm?
Listen, I'm trying to stretch out the vocal cords, trying to. Oh yeah, it's been a minute. I'm ready to get back to it here.
Sibilance.
Basketball.
So it really is like the second half of the season for it's the third of the regular season, right? So 27 games, 28 games, 27 games. But for the Celtics, having played 57 games,
yeah,
another 50 games is like we're right around the midpoint of the season. If they get to where they're supposed to be in June. Playing 100 and I think the maximum might be 110. I didn't even do the math, but whatever it is, we're right there. So the potential is that this is the halfway point of the season. Either way, Tom, first of all, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you.
Okay.
Feeling, rested, all that.
Did you get a good break, good sleep, work on your nutrition?
I have a 7-year-old who plays club sports, so no. But that's okay.
I don't have an excuse, and also no. So, let's start by looking at the schedule. I think that's the easiest place to start with. What can we expect moving forward? I've laid it out where the Celtics are currently 39-16. So if they get 21 more wins, which means 21-6. They'll get to 60 wins. Getting to 64 like they did last year, I don't think they're going to be that perfect. 21-6.
Quite the run.
It would be. But they've done that already earlier this season.
That's
so
true.
They can do it again.
Yep.
So they come out, Philly, fully healthy, minus Xavier Tillman, which doesn't really matter much. I'm sorry, Xavier. Then they get 2 days off. They play the Knicks at home. Then they go to Toronto, Detroit back-to-back on the road. That shouldn't be too bad. Toronto and Detroit are right next door to each other. It's the easiest non-single city back-to-back that you're going to get.
Yeah.
Then they come back home for this is going to be a tough homestand. So
is San Francisco, Sacramento easier?
I guess. Yeah, because you don't have to go through customs.
Yeah. And it's really short.
It is really short. You can drive it.
Yeah.
I've never done Toronto to Detroit. You can drive Toronto to Detroit, right? Like that's
you could. It'd be a bit of a trek though.
Okay, but I have done the drive, San Francisco to Sacramento, so that would be the easiest one.
I was in the same car with you. Yes,
that's right. That's right.
Together. Yeah.
Yes. So, So that would be the easiest. Toronto, Detroit might be the second easiest, unless you want to interrupt my flow again.
I'll try.
Go through the cities.
We'll
go through the other cities
about this one, but it won't be the last time this podcast that I interrupt your flow.
I mean, if you want to go into different arenas, the New York, Brooklyn back-to-back, but that's the same city, really.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you can stay in the same hotel.
Yeah.
What else would there be? New York to Philly.
New
York to Philly back-to-back is an easy one. That's a short one.
Boston, New York is a real short one.
That's an easy one too. But I think Toronto, Detroit is right there.
It's an easy one. That's a good one.
It's an easy one is the point. That's the point. Toronto and Detroit. And in terms of competition, Toronto shouldn't be too hard. Shouldn't be. Detroit will be more difficult, but that should be a win. These are three road games they should win. The Knicks game at home, that'll be a fun one, but also I'll put that in the should win.
I honestly, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the city that's so close to the Celtics, but I don't love that matchup for New York at all.
Cleveland at home on Friday night is a tough one, but I like the Celtics matchups, but that's a tough one. Put that one in the tough one category.
A tough one, but also to interrupt your flow, as I'm promised. Mm-hmm. Also, though, that's the kind of game that the Celtics will for sure get up for too, right? Like that's
yes, they will. Yeah, they'll get up for that, and then Denver on Sunday. They always get up for the Denver game. Mm-hmm. A couple days off. Portland, Philly at home back-to-back. This is a 3-game and 4-night stretch, and if you extend it out, 3 and 4 could be 4 in 6, or 5 in 8. So either way, so Portland, Philly back-to-back. Okay, should win those games. Lakers Saturday night, tough one. 3rd game in 4 nights. We've seen them. This to me is the first test. This is the first. Okay, what are you doing? Are you giving into the stuff you gave into in the second third of the season? Or are you now starting to take this home stretch seriously? So looking at this schedule, Lakers, March 8th at home is the first, tough 3 games and 4 nights, a reason, like they've not been doing great at home historically this season. This is a game that they have kind of looked bad in this season or not looked their best. So Tom, if my first indicator of what the Celtics really are going to be moving forward is this game against the Lakers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's going to be interesting too, because two games after that, they got OKC again. Right. So that's a really interesting, test. And I mean, obviously the Lakers it's going to be very it's going to be fun to see that matchup in its new form for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's a good indicator. I think that the Cleveland game, honestly, like from the way we've seen the Celtics play the Cavaliers, I almost feel like that's not a good test because we know they're going to be up for that one. Like,
yes.
And I think it will be interesting too. I know it's not a game that like anybody's like, oh man, can't wait to watch it. But like the Raptors, the Trailblazers, like how seriously do they take those types of games as well? Right. Because it's like, yeah, you should win them. But like, we also know that this Celtics team has more than enough capability to blow those teams away. They were doing that at the start of the season. Do they do that? Like, do they kind of come in with that level of, okay, we're trying to get ready for something here. We're ramping up. We're really playing both, playing hard on the defensive end. Are we, moving the ball the way that it should move? Like, I think those types of things are going to be interesting in those games that aren't as interesting as Lakers and Cavaliers and Knicks and Thunder. But I mean, if you're trying to go, what is it, 21-7 the rest of the way or whatever it is, like, yeah. I mean, those, you can't afford to be dropping any of those, kind of gimme games either. Like those have to be wins. I think if they are, that actually is not as impressive a sign, but probably as good a sign for their mentality as maybe beating a Lakers team or a Thunder or whatever.
Yeah. So we can even extend it out to that stretch of the Lakers is that first test, but then if you do beat them, do you let down against Utah?
Right.
2 nights later, because you've got OKC coming up on Wednesday. So
yeah, that Utah game's a tough one. That is the cream center of a very difficult Oreo right there with the Lakers.
That's right. Exactly. So you can be like, all right, they pushed through, they beat the Lakers, and that's like great. They might be pushing past this stuff, and then they lose to Utah at home. You're like, oh man, because they're looking ahead to OKC, and that OKC game especially tough because, like I said, the 5th game in 8 nights. There's not a lot of energy in that. There's not a lot of juice, but it's also the Thunder where the Celtics looked both maybe their best and their absolute worst in first and second half. So
you need a little get back in that game.
Yes. So like that, those 3 games each have their own. The Lakers, the 3rd game in 4 nights. Utah being that bad team in the middle of two good teams and teams that you want. Obviously, the Lakers has historical juice, and you want to get back at the OKC Thunder. That Utah game has its own level of like, what do you got for us, guys? And so that stretch, we'll just say that stretch will be very telling. Let's get on the road, and then we'll finish off the schedule portion, and then we'll get into individual players when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the games tip off, we're just talking about all these games, NBA action, just getting back into it. There's no better place to get in on the action other than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on a 4th quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. The live betting feature is there, keeps every moment of the game exciting. If you're kind of losing interest, that's a way to kind of keep your interest if you want. Make sure you're setting your limits, setting your budget so you can bet responsibly, gamble responsibly. You know what your disposable income is. That's what you can afford to lose. That's what your budget should be. Have fun with it. Don't go overboard. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Now, go sign up for the Locked On Celtics newsletter. Make it your first read every day. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, click on that Locked On Celtics logo, then go put your email in. Monday through Friday, you'll get an email from me about the Celtics. You'll get additional coverage on the NBA, fantasy from the Locked On Network, links to some of the great Celtics coverage there. Get it, open it, read it. If you miss a podcast, it's a great way to keep up with things. So go check it out, LockedOnDaily.com. All right, Tom, after that home stretch, which again will be very telling, they hit the road mostly road the rest of the way. The March is split very, very home heavy and then very road heavy, including one more trip out west. So Miami, Brooklyn on the road back-to-back. Now, that is one of the toughest back-to-backs you're going to have.
Yeah.
You go from OKC at home, then you go down to Miami, play Miami, then fly up to Brooklyn, which is not a short flight.
That is not a short one, no.
And you play an hour earlier. So you play a 7 p.m. game in Miami, come up, play a 6 p.m. game in Brooklyn. They're going to get into New York at like 4 a.m. It's going to be a tough turnaround. That Brooklyn game, when we look at like schedule losses, Brooklyn on the 15th might be the one where it's like, okay, that's a tough one. I can overlook a loss to Brooklyn in that situation. Again, you've just played 5 games in 8 nights. You had a day off. You hit the road down to Miami. It's also Miami. So there's like, sun, all of that stuff. And you come right back up to New York and like, so that game, I'm not even, if they win that game, then great. Then maybe that's a sign that they're pushing through some things. But I'm looking at that one as a schedule loss. 2 games later, they come home for Brooklyn. 2 days off, Brooklyn at home, 2 days off, West Coast swing. So I'm assuming splitting those 2 Brooklyn games. Then Utah, Portland, Sacramento, 3 and 4 nights. Portland, Sacramento on the back-to-back. That one is like, this is going to be a grind. If this is going to be a real test for them, they're going to have to really push to win these games. You should beat Utah. You should beat Portland. You should beat Sacramento. But the way the schedule is laying out, I can see them dropping one of these. Now we're getting like 60 wins is starting to fall by the wayside. I don't know. What's your take on this little stretch?
No, I think that's right. I think that's the make or break time, right? And I think, you mentioned the back-to-back with Miami and Brooklyn. I mean, the other, it's the literal start time of the game, right? That Brooklyn game starts at 6 p.m. Like there are not 24 hours between the tip-off in Miami and the tip-off in Brooklyn. Like that's kind of tough. I think, it's interesting too with this team though, right? Because I think one thing that makes you feel good about their chances in the playoffs is how they have sort of like at all the moments that it's like, man, something could, this could kind of not fall apart, but this could be, a tough game. They do, the OKC accepted, they have done a pretty good job of kind of getting up for those moments. I mean, of kind of being, Joe has done a good job of challenging these guys to get up for those moments, I think, and kind of be ready for them and take them as a challenge. But I think, that Utah, Portland, Sacramento stretch, right? If you can take 2 of those, that's a nice spell, because then you have a day off before Phoenix, 2 days off before the Spurs, a day off before Memphis. And I mean, those aren't easy games, but there's enough rest in there to perform well in them, to have a chance in them. I think, that Miami Brooklyn back-to-back, I think that's one where it's like, hey, see what your depth can do. Like these are not those are not amazing teams. Like, yeah, like, I don't know. Tatum goes one night, Jaylen goes the other night, like Porzingis goes one night, Horford goes the other night, Luke goes both of them and does his best. It's like, you've got some, Drew goes one night, Derek goes another night. Like you've got some options there to potentially pick up wins in both of those. I think that's going to be that's the other thing that could make a big difference as the Celtics are pushing down the stretch is like, okay, can they start to come up with some of these lineups where you're like, like last year when it was like, okay, Tatum, maybe one other starter, and then 3 bench guys has a net rating of plus 147 or whatever, like these like lineups that are just absurdly dominant in small stretches. It's like, can you pick up some of those, see how those go in some of these bigger moments? If you can come up with some of those five-man groups that are really, really good, and that can give you a chance to kind of stagger your lineups a little bit over the course of games, some of these back-to-backs, some of these 3 games in 4 nights might not be so damaging.
I like that idea. I think that's going to be the way to go. Probably should have seen that a little bit more over the past, over this last stretch. Mm-hmm. And the arrival of Tory Craig helps,
right? Yes,
in this.
For sure.
Like this is where,
for sure,
this is where getting Tory Craig kind of like you can play him a lot more against Brooklyn, or Miami, and like lean on that depth, like you said. So this is where the Celtics, I think if they're pushing hard and they're getting through that early portion of the March schedule and they're doing well, then you can start to like, okay, stagger guys, like you said, stagger on this road trip and finish the month. I think they can finish the month strong. Maybe they lose. How many games do they got here? There's 4, 8, 10, 15 games. So if you come out of it 12-3, I think that's going to be a really good. I think that's a really good month because a lot of games. 15 games is a heavy month, and the schedule is going to be very brutal. I think anything 12-3 or better, you look at it as a success. If you can do better than 12-3 in this month, obviously 13-2, 14. If you can do that,
that's great.
then that's really, really great. And quickly now, April becomes a little wonky because we don't know what the standings are going to be.
Right.
The New York Knicks are 2.5 games behind Boston right now. Obviously, they play again. We don't know what they're going to be. We don't know if the Celtics are going to make a move. That Cleveland result early could be informative on how the Celtics approach this, the end of this. But we finish April with Miami, Phoenix, Washington every other day, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, a back-to-back New York to Orlando. Again, not the easiest back-to-back. New York down to Orlando. It's not Miami, but it's not that far from Miami.
Right.
So that's not an easy one. And then Charlotte on the baseball series at home. This is where we don't know who's going to play. We don't know how it's going to go. So it's hard to say what they should do, what they shouldn't do, because if they are solidly in second, but solidly ahead of New York, and if that game in New York means like the guaranteed, this is where we push, either New York is eliminated from the second seed. Like if that's that game, then Orlando, Charlotte might not mean anything.
Right.
And then the Celtics just kind of sit and wait because they'll have to wait to see who their opponent is. Side note, I'll let you get. We're going to take a break here. Finishing second, who your first round opponent is before the top seed does, because the team that wins, right? Don't you? In the play-in tournament.
No, wait.
Let me take a break. Think about that.
Okay.
Think about that. Hold on one second. I think I got it right. We'll be right back. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA Game Night is 7 days a week, covering every game in the association. Boy, tough show tonight. The one game in the association will be covered heavily on Locked On NBA Game Night. It's Charlotte and the Lakers. But then I will have the Friday show, and go check that out. And then, of course, regular Locked On NBA while we cover the rest of the league. All right, Tom Westerholm. Do we recall exactly how the play-in tournament works? Because I totally forgot.
No. However, I have a different point to make. I have no idea. I don't remember that at all. But as you're looking that up, I will also point out that you say 12-3 for March would be really good, and it would be really good. If you go 11-4 in March to hit that 21-7 mark that you mentioned, you only have to go 4-3 in April, right? Like, and that's 4-3 in April is, again, like you said, with games, 2 games against Charlotte, 1 game against the Wizards, 1 game against whatever iteration of the Heat they're rolling out there. Phoenix is not anything to, write home about this season necessarily. Like it is like, if you, I guess that's only over 2 months. So then you'd have to win out in February. But either way, I mean, I think that the nice thing about your April is, like, if you need to push down the stretch in April, April does give you that opportunity. Like there are plenty of winnable games there.
Miami, Phoenix, Washington, New York, Orlando, Charlotte. Plenty winnable games.
You could go 7-0 during that stretch if you need to. I mean, like, you can't guarantee it, obviously. You could. Those are 7 winnable games.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're making a push down the stretch, April is right there. I guess there is still some February left, so maybe the 12-3 and 4-3 doesn't necessarily work, but you get my point.
So I was right about the play-in tournament.
Look at you go.
Just like 7-8 plays each other, 9-10 plays each other. The winner of 7-8 becomes the 7 seed, and the Celtics would know who they're playing, and they can start preparing, while the loser plays the 9-10 winner to become the 8th seed. So the Celtics, as the 2nd seed, would know sooner that who they are playing, and therefore their preparation can start. Not that you need a ton of preparation, but looking at the standings, you just don't want some weirdness to happen. The Sixers, am so ruling them out, like 99.5% ruling them out. But there is still that 0.5 of like, look, they just signed Lonnie Walker. We've made a big deal about Lonnie Walker, so I can't be like, oh, that's inconsequential now. If I'm sitting there saying like he could be something of consequence for Boston, then I can't sit there and be like he's not going to be anything of consequence for Philadelphia. I think as far as the Lonnie Walker signing goes, I feel like this is going to prove one of us right. Either the two of us or like Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla. Right. Like it's one duo is going to be proven correct. Either Lonnie Walker's going to go there.
And the winner gets to be the GM of the Boston Celtics.
Yes. So we'll see.
We'll see.
I'll be honest with you. Kind of hope Brad wins because I don't want that job. I'll take the salary though.
Right, for sure.
The salary I'll take. So I guess where I end up with all of this is the Celtics. I don't think are going to win 60 games. Probably like more like 58.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
They could if they overperform. They could. So it's not out of the question. Going for the top seed. I don't want them to go too crazy going for the top seed because it's not worth it. And the second seed is just fine. I don't care. I've said it a million times in this podcast. I'm not backtracking. I don't care if they play all 7 games in Cleveland. So I don't care if Cleveland is the top seed and they meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. I really don't. And the potential that Cleveland loses on their way to the conference finals is still there, in which case the Celtics would have the home court advantage. So it's, we still have to see. But regardless, the matchups are still the matchups. The Celtics double big lineup has done great. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can touch on that, but the Celtics double big lineup has done great. It's really interesting that the Celtics have leaned so heavily double big, but that kind of sends the message to Cleveland. Like, you can't be a Cleveland, Cavaliers fan and be like, well, our double big lineup's going to really cause problems for you. Be like, yeah, we got one of those too in Boston. Yeah. Like
2 or 3 of those really. Cornette's been great.
It's like, right. It's Porzingis, Al, Cornet, throw Keita in there. And it's like, yeah, sure. Double bigs. We got them. You want them? Sure. So I guess let's touch on that because I think that's going to be a big part of all of this. I'm curious to see if double big is a smokescreen or the plan in the playoffs because they're starting. They don't start double big.
Right.
They sub in double big. And so do the Celtics, if they play the Cavaliers, put Holiday on the bench? Do they start their normal lineup? What did they do against the Cavs in the playoffs? They're sending a message of like, we can match up with you if you want, but also our starters are Drew, Derek, Jayson, Jaylen, and Kristaps, and you're going to have to deal with that as well. I'm really curious to see if the Celtics are just throwing out there that we can play either way. And if you're going to play the Celtics, you got to prepare for both. And that's going to be hard. I lean towards this big, elaborate curveball that Joe Mazzulla is throwing teams in the playoffs where they don't know what's coming. Because you can go small with Tatum at the center, or you can go super big with Porzingis. You can go Porzingis and Luke Cornett if you want, the 2 biggest guys in the team. So that has been effective as well. So I'm really curious to see how that maintains through this final 27 games and ultimately what Joe does with that come playoff time.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good one. I think that the double big thing is very interesting. I believe with Cleveland, I think one of the big things is like, okay, what's going to be the best way that you can go about punishing Garland, right? And like the double bigs is definitely a way you can do that, right? Because like you can, I mean, he's toast if he gets stuck on any of those. I mean, the guards also punish him. Like he's a he's that archetype of a guy that I just think is like so tough if you're a team playing against the Celtics, where it's like you need him on the floor. Like you got to have it. He can score. He's one of your star guys, but man, there's just nowhere the Celtics are not going to let you hide him at all. And like you can do that both ways, right? And I think that's what's important about the Celtics' flexibility in that way is you can punish him double big, you can punish him smaller, doesn't matter. Like they can hit you both ways. So it's almost like the onus is a little more on Cleveland. Like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, see what you can do.
Jaylen, Jayson, Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford.
Yeah, like, what are you going to do? It's tough, man. But like, by that same token, too, I think by the same token of having a bunch of different looks, I'm the other kind of duo that I'm really interested in toward the end of the season here is Hauser and Tory Craig, because I think, you talked earlier about Tory Craig, getting a chance here. I mean, not only is it very helpful to have a real NBA player who can now come in and play, you also now get you got tons of opportunities to get a look on okay, is he a playoff player for the Celtics? Yeah. And if he is, what does that mean for Hauser? Because I mean, the thing with Hauser is that sometimes it's so we've talked about it. Sometimes he comes in and his 4-minute stretch just completely breaks the game. And it's just the other team is just playing catch up for the last 27 minutes of the game. And that's what Hauser can do. But then sometimes he misses a couple threes and doesn't really look like he's in rhythm and the other team attacks him. And I don't know, what if Tory Craig is a little more consistent in that way? And I think that's getting at least a look at that is going to be interesting. I think that's going to be one of the storylines to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Tory Craig can be a guy who helps keep Tatum and Brown's minutes just a little more in check, not down like they're playing 32 minutes, but 36 instead of 38, just an extra minute or here or there. So, 3-4 minute stretch to kind of bridge some gaps. And then if Boston is up in the fourth quarter, up 10, 12, and you want to kind of really focus on your defense, then maybe you go Tory Craig as a better defender who can hit shots versus if you're down, whatever, and you go with Sam Hauser, who's a shooter who can kind of defend.
Yeah.
And, you hope that you can defend well enough and then get your elite shooters out there to knock down shots versus, get your elite defenders out there and can knock down shots,
Yeah.
I think that makes the most sense, but yeah, it will be interesting to see how that goes and what it allows the Celtics to do and where Joe Mazzulla feels the most comfortable using Tory Craig and does anybody's minutes to, drop off? Does anybody suffer in that regard?
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
All right. I think those are basically the things to watch for, other than can Jayson Tatum still be dominant? Can Jaylen Brown, still hit 3-pointers and can he get better? Yeah, of course
it would be cool. I mean, Tatum went into the All-Star break on one of those kind of stretches where it's oof.
Yeah.
This guy's awesome. It's fun to watch him when he gets going like that. It'd be cool if that kind of continued a little bit.
It'd be nice. We want to see that, obviously, but that's an obvious one. I think,
right, yeah.
I think Jaylen shooting better is an obvious one. And, Drew Holiday's not on the injury report. So what, is he ready for a home stretch? And, Al Horford, all those things are there. We know those things. So I think what we covered is pretty good. So Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate you for hopping on.
Appreciate you.
And I do appreciate every single person listening, watching, whatever you're doing, however you decide to listen, in the car, in the shower, walking the dog, watching the show. Maybe you're at work, you have the YouTube on a separate tab kind of playing. I'm not going to tell anybody. You can do it. It's cool with me. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Get into the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking about everything that I'm saying. And then I would love it if you shared the podcast told everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.